Well, about the time you will be rushing to file your income tax return, the developers of Cape Wind will finally know whether or not they have a project and a future. They have fought now through 9 years of opposition from Nantucket Island and other nearby property owners, and most recently from local Native American tribes. Interior Secretary Ken Salazar now says after all of that, it is time for a decision, and he will be the one to make it. However, before he does make that decision, he's giving the parties involved a final chance to make their own compromises. Clean Sky's Margaret Ryan is with us now after talking to the Secretary himself yesterday. And there is a deadline, Margaret, but as we said, there is an opening for these parties to come together.
Absolutely, Tyler. Salazar made no bones about his dilemma. He and President Obama strongly support renewable energy, and studies show the Atlantic coastline is one of America's largest wind resources. But he's also, in his words, the Chief Historic Preservation Officer of the U.S., and he takes seriously claims by the Wampanoag tribe that Nantucket Sound has sacred meaning to them and may overlie settlements of their ancestors dating back to the last ice age. Now, he spent his day in 3 consecutive meetings yesterday, first with the tribes, then with local officials and interest groups, and finally with the parties that have to sign any legal compromise. He then met with reporters and said he'd listen to everyone, but the legal historic consultation process has a month to go, and he has not and will not make up his mind until that is over.
I have not reached a decision on which way we will go, and so the possibility remains that I will approve the application in the same way that the possibility remains that we as a department will deny the application. The process that will unfold in the coming weeks will be to take us through a defined, formalized process to bring us to conclusion.
Now, Interior circulated a draft compromise as recently as June, trying to get an agreement among the parties. It would involve it would involve reducing several turbines or changing their locations and allowing archaeologists to examine core borings before the turbine tower's 80-foot deep foundations are poured. If there were evidence of human settlement in those borings, as the Wampanoags claim, then work would be halted at that location. Now, Salazar said he'd heard passionate arguments, some from people who want no project at all, and he was uncertain any compromise could be reached in this case. But for future projects, he told me after the press conference, the ground broken by Cape Wind will provide far more clarity for investors.
I think going forward, the process will be a much easier process to deal with these kinds of applications because there has never been an offshore wind project permitted in federal waters in the United States. And so always when you're taking the first projects through, you're learning a lot, and hopefully that the lesson here will be that the process needs to be streamlined going forward.
Now, if Cape Wind gets the okay, it would be the first wind project off the Atlantic coast and in the U.S. Some 130 turbines, 3.6 megawatts apiece, set 600 to 900 yards apart in a grid stretching across Nantucket Sound. The towers will be 16 feet in diameter with blades reaching 44 stories into the sky. The nearest land, Salazar said, is about 4 miles away. Now, some opponents are now urging the whole project be relocated to the south, but Salazar said that would restart the entire 9-year process.
Well, as we said yesterday, Margaret, you had the chance to talk one-on-one with the Secretary about this yesterday, and let's say Cape Wind does not go through. It seems that he is still very much convinced that the Atlantic is the best potential wind resource we have in the U.S., correct?
Well, he actually said that there are measurements that show the Atlantic coast is that. And he said, he and President Obama are in favor of renewable resources, but everywhere isn't appropriate. Every location isn't appropriate. So that he said to me, and he said to other reporters as well, this isn't necessarily a precedent that would rule out anything else. But what he wants to see, what it does show, is that the process is not what it should be. The process needs streamlining so that more developers can come forward and be assured of some kind of timely decision instead of the death by 1,000 cuts that the Cape Wind seems to have been getting.
Yes, streamlining the process seems to be a given after 9 years of battles for this project. All right, Margaret, thank you very much.